Hello, this is Lisa LaRose here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM. Michael J. Russ will be joining me from the road a little bit later. And we have a very special guest today. First of all, I just want to say that sometimes in life you meet somebody, and they literally, when you meet them, they inspire you so much, they light you up like a Christmas tree. And our guest today, Eric Alexandrakis, is one of those people. He is somebody that is so uniquely creative and really has sought to create ripples throughout the world. He is a 2-time Grammy nominee in the Best Americana Performance category. He is just somebody that is so amazing, and I'm so grateful and happy to welcome you. I will tell you that when I came across your site and the things and the information and the music, it was like walking into an amusement park. And as a child, looking around at all of the amazing things, and what was I going to pick first? Oh my gosh, it was just there was words which moved my soul. There was your story which touched my heart. There were colors, the sounds, and I felt that I was a kindred spirit with you. And so first of all, I would like to say welcome to you, and I'm going to allow you to pronounce your beautiful last name for our audience and our listeners properly.
Well, it depends on what side of the Atlantic you're on. So if you're on the right side, Alexandrakis, but if you're on the left side, it could be anything. So you could say Alexandrakis. That's fine.
Well, thank you. I will work on that, and if we can be delighted enough to have you on the show again, I would absolutely. Sure. I will practice that. Maybe you can give me a little bit of coaching. So, first of all, for our audience, do not know a little bit about your journey. I found like I said, that it was like walking into an amusement park. So for me, there was your connection to Michael Nesmith, who I, as a Canadian who moved with a transplant into the United States, I didn't know the Monkees until I came here, until I was in high school. And to be able to discover that and to see what you have done with that music, and to not only do things with Michael's music, but the other things in the creative languaging. I would like to just share a little bit. First of all, Eric is a 2-time Grammy nominee. He is a singer, songwriter, composer, producer who is one of the most creative people that I've come across in a long time. I would love to hear a little bit and learn a little bit about your journey, and I know the audience would love to hear a little bit about your path and what brought you to music.
Well, people like myself were generally wired to be creative. So creative people, there have been scientific studies done on this. Creative people have some kind of extra nerve endings in certain parts of the brain and react differently to colors and images and sounds and things like that. So it wasn't really something that brought me to it. It was just always there. It's just, you have certain experiences and certain things that trigger the self-awareness of what you are, as you get older and grow up, and you just kind of, it's like, certain guitarists gravitate towards the guitar. There's a reason for that. There's a connection. There's something there that, the tone of it, the feel of something, it does something for them, and they become guitar players and they become this or whatever. So it was always a thing. I started with classical piano training at age 6, and then had theatrical training and things of that nature ever since I was a little kid, all the way into high school. Was in bands, had my first recording session at age 16, and spent pretty much every weekend, some portion of it, in recording studios in Miami, learning the ropes, and went to college and studied English Lit and Public Relations, and got a graduate degree in music business, and produced the first digitally watermarked CD while I was in college, and just traveled all over the world, growing up, and my parents taking us to the greatest art museums around the world and seeing all the great masters and the paintings, and I've always been interested in photography and cinema, and there's a lot to fill in the blanks with, but that could take several days. But discovered by John Taylor from Duran Duran, and then all kinds of things started kind of flowing my way after that, and worked with John Malkovich and Yoko Ono, and just a lot of stuff. David Lynch, and did some short films, and one of them shortlisted in Cannes, and so there's a whole plethora of things floating about all these years.
What I find so fascinating, Eric, is that everything that you do radiates so much joy, and that's, I think, why I see it. Like I said, I feel like I was like at an amusement park. I delved into I do, and it was like you walk into the gates, and so you see the roller coaster. So the first thing that I was drawn to, and this is, and again, it's a visual. And it was the words, and it's okay to waltz alone. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Like that, and it was one of the first points. And then I found humor, and I found joy. And for a lot of us on this planet right now, we get disconnected from that point of joy. And on our self-discovery, I think we've sort of been delving into that, and I think I mentioned to you briefly that I had put a video up on my Instagram page, and what I found so fascinating, I put things up. I love color. Like you, I pay attention to languaging, and what I found was on a soul level that it started to resonate with people, that there was some sort of a disconnect between who we are and how amazing we are as human beings, to losing our ability to feel worthy. And it really echoed in the comments that I received, and it just, I was just literally floored by it. And so I see that, and I see that in your music and the message that you try to bring forth. It's just amazing. Do you think some of that, having grown up in a family that was Greek, that there's a lot of love shown and a lot of like physical contact, do you feel that helped nurture and shape you?
It could be. There was that, but that could be a subconscious thing. Like my whole thing is, I used to be very, very kind of reserved, taking everything really seriously. I take the work really seriously, but at this point, it took me a while to learn to just not really take life seriously. Clearly, that can mean different things to different people. If you're going to drive somewhere, wear a seatbelt. That's serious. But everything can end in a heartbeat. I could drop dead while talking to you right now, which would be an interesting episode. But
for sure.
Is that Michael?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I just been listening.
Hey, man. Welcome.
I just wanted to ask if there was any particular event in life that kind of pivoted you in that direction towards not taking life so seriously.
Yeah, I did have cancer twice. So, the first time...
Okay, there we go.
I did the 8 months of chemo, or 6 months, whatever it was. And when I was done, I was very I ripped my new pants. Who cares? Just pants. I crashed the car. Who cares? It's the car. Whatever. But I've always been very, I actually 30 years ago next summer marks 30 years that I've been in the music business.
Wow.
And there was a few events that happened, personal things that happened that kind of put me into work overdrive at that time. And I've always been driven. But like prior to that, there was a sense of fear in, I guess, being rejected if I tried to get into some project or something. So
yeah,
that event, a kind of personal thing happened, and it made me realize that I never want to have regrets again.
Mm-hmm.
So it put me into work overdrive, and so much so that I worked so hard that a few months later was when the cancer started to grow in me.
Right.
So, and it wasn't discovered until, 4 years later. So it was slowly growing in me to the point to where it was the size of a fist, pushing my ribcage out.
Did the fear that you were experiencing, I just have to ask this question because now, after that experience, do you still have the same fears about on occasion? My brother's an actor, and he says, acting is kind of like, music. You get one job, another job, and you have to have a certain amount of faith that the jobs will keep coming, and you have to live your life based on that. And I'm wondering if that's something that you felt when you were, as you were progressing over the 30 years.
When the cancer thing was over the first time, I was still very driven. In fact, I went back to my horrible regimen of 24-hour sessions, which may or may not have been the reason why I got it again.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really have a fear about work because I was always very confident in my abilities. The fear that, the first round of chemo was done, I wasn't afraid of it coming back. So then when I had the second one, I had to have a stem cell transplant, was in a hospital for a month in a germ-free environment. And then that messed me up emotionally. So the emotional scarring was worse than the physical scarring. I had tubes coming out of me and all kinds of kind of Frankenstein sort of things. So when I got out of the hospital, the fear was, is it going to happen again? Is it going to happen again? Is it going to happen again? So to a certain point, the only fear I have is if I get a weird pain, what could that be? Whereas I don't fear rejection. I don't fear, because, in this line of work, you're rejected every day.
Right.
And I've been lucky. I've probably only had 5 bad reviews in my entire life. And most of those have been kind of weird and malicious. So,
yeah.
I just want to interrupt, but you incorporated that into your music, which I found so fascinating. That you take these snippets and I don't know, Michael, if you had an opportunity to listen, but part of what Eric's music and the communication that you put forth was spoken word, and I found it just to be so incredibly powerful. And you were nominated for that spoken word album. It just is. I think as an artist, to people, and again, that's the disconnect from humanity. People have this anonymity, and they feel that they can say things. They don't realize that it does impact you.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It has about 2 hours of music on there as well, music that I recorded while I had the tumor unknowingly, and then when I was going through treatment. It was done on a borrowed 4-track cassette recorder. It was never mastered. That stuff still gets used in TV and all kinds of things. And,
wow.
It's, the only thing I'm really scared of in life is anything happening to my kid. That's my only fear. I have no fear with anything else. I'll write to some A-list movie star and say, hey, I'd like to do this with you. And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they don't. And, a lot of my friends are like, how do you have the gumption to do that? I'm like, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. Like, I'm interested in this thing. This is the thing. It's nonsense. They all have to take showers too, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, right. They're just people. And they can say no.
Right, just people.
No, what's the worst that can happen? They could say no, and you just move on to somebody else.
Well, the worst that can happen is you get in a situation where you are doing something with them, and then they go completely nuts on you, which has happened. and then you're just like, you're just like, wow, I had a poster of you on my wall when I was 10, and you're a complete asshole. So,
you're an idiot.
Sorry for
that. That does happen because they are people.
Right.
Yeah, and fame messes people up. Fame messes people up in varying degrees. So, you get a sense of entitlement, you get, whatever. I'm not even close to the level of some of the people that I'm friends with or that I work with. And occasionally, you do something and somebody doesn't respond the way you want to. I'm like, who do they think they are? I've got them. It's like, wait a minute, chill out, dude. Don't start that crap.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So,
check that in.
Yeah, it's no. I have no fear. I mean, I've been in precarious plane rides, that I thought that was going to be it. It's just like, okay, fine, So.
Yeah, but you're still here because you have a greater message, and you are the Greek Elvis. I did glean that.
Yeah.
I love that too.
Greek Elvis.
He is. He is the Greek Elvis. I thought we are honored beyond measure. So I just have a question. So you connected with John Taylor from Duran Duran because he was looking for an iron or an ironing board, and how did that come about exactly? I'm just so fascinated by that.
So that group is quite possible. Well, not possibly. They definitely are my biggest influence. So they were my Beatles growing up.
I hear it in your music too, by the way.
It's in there.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, if I were to break it down to three, probably my biggest influences are them, Noel Gallagher of Oasis, his songwriting, and John Williams. So every song title I write, and then the vibe, I try to make it like a cinematic thing, like a film. So if a title doesn't look good on screen in capital letters like a film title, I won't use it. So that's kind of what I'm always going for. But with him, I just finished the first 6 months of chemo, and the doctor said, don't go anywhere. Your immune system's still messed up. You could catch something and get sick and whatever. So I was looking through the paper one day and I saw an ad for a show with an artist called Jonathan Taylor. And he never goes by Jonathan. So I saw this. I'm like, Jonathan Taylor? Who's Jonathan Taylor? And I'm like, is that John Taylor? So I called the venue, and they said it was him. So right off the bat, that show suffered from bad promotion because who's Jonathan Taylor? Nobody knows if it's Jonathan Taylor. So I said, I'm so going to this. And but I wasn't supposed to go anywhere, and I said, I don't care, I'm going. So the day he was supposed to play, there was a tropical storm hitting Miami, and I didn't know if it was canceled or what, so I called the venue again, and they said, no, it's not canceled. So I drove in the tropical storm. I got there maybe 3 hours early. I'm always early to everything, which is very unlikely for musicians, but I'm a big advocate of punctuality and playing in time. So I get there 3 hours early. Nobody's there. I'm under a leaky canopy in a tropical storm, holding my tapes that I did, the 4-track cassette tapes, thinking I'm just going to give it to them. And then one of my buddies, he shows up, so we're there together. And then we see like the crew coming back and forth from this hotel next to the venue, and we're like, you know what? They're probably staying there, and he's probably going to come out at some point in the lobby, and maybe I can give him some tapes and say hi and that sort of thing. So we went to the lobby. Still nobody had come to stand in line. We went to the lobby, and we were just sitting there. And suddenly he comes to the front desk in glasses and yellow socks looking for an ironing board. I'm like, oh my God, there he is. So then I told my friend, I'm like, dude, don't bother him. Don't trust him. And or not trust him, but don't rush him. So as I'm saying this to him, suddenly my body just kind of takes over, and like I find myself moving towards him without even realizing. It was very strange. And I just said to him, "Hey, John, I'm an admirer, and I really enjoy your music, and here's some of mine, and hope you enjoy it." And it was very cool. And we went back and enjoyed the show. It was right up against the stage since I was first there. And then we got to meet him for a bit afterwards. And then he and his assistant at the time contacted me a few weeks later, or months I think it was, and said they wanted to sell my first solo album on his website, which was probably the first webzine of its kind. It was called Trust the Process. It was really cool. It was really interesting. He talked about films, he talked about books, he talked about artists. He showed photos of his growing up years. It was probably the first of its kind. And then it just grew from there, So he's been really supportive. He played on a track of mine called Mediterranean Sun. Bass and drums are by Steve Ferroni of the Heartbreakers. Because he played with Duran Duran when Roger Taylor left for a while. He played on Notorious and their biggest hit, Ordinary World, and a bunch of stuff. So yeah. So it just blossomed, and my company represented Duran Duran for licensing, because I also have this company, My Own Music, which does rights clearance and music licensing and music supervision, and I represented them for a lot of that and some other major artists, and hooked up with all the major labels and major publishers, and done stuff with a lot of major brands like Live Nation and AEG and Kate Spade and all that. So yeah, it was a big deal for me. Still is.
Yeah, and you're still you. And it's interesting. I'm wondering, because I did see that you love cameras, and I'm wondering, was it the Duran Duran Girls on Film that got you interested in cameras?
No, I don't know.
Is it just, in my opinion, like when you use a camera, you capture a moment in time. And so we have these moments in time. Yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. So what are the moments in time that inspire you?
I don't know. I've always loved cameras and Super 8 cameras. And I have loads of them, like old ones from the 40s, the 30s, the 20s, the early 1900s, 50s, 60s. I just love photography. It's like that Rod Stewart album, Every Picture Tells a Story. For me, it was the Facebook picture. Every picture does tell a story. And then I'm just fascinated by light, color, shapes. For me, I never really cared to take photos of people. I always there's always like shapes or things, or, different things. I love Polaroids. So when I hooked up with Sandro Miller, and John Malkovich for this big project that John was playing all these famous people from through time, and Sandro was reproducing the photos, and I got to watch that whole process, which was an unbelievable education. And watching the film, we did a film based on Plato's Allegory of the Cave that I wanted to do, like have John recite over music, and it just turned into this big thing. We did like 4 vinyl releases, signings all over the place, London and LA and Chicago. And so I don't know what it is. It's just, I love capturing moments and angles and light and things, and it's hard to describe. It's kind of an obsession.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and I even took your journey around the Lone Pine Mall. I like I said, Michael, you joined mid conversation, but I said to Eric that going to his website for me was like being a little kid and walking into an amusement park and seeing like, oh my gosh, I want to go on that, and I want to go on that, and when am I? Wait, do I need tickets for that, or how long's the line? Because I don't care, because I'm doing that. And so when I listened to, I was loving the Lone Pine Mall. I know it sounds so funny, but I was like, that's exactly what a superhero does. You put on the music from Back to the Future, and you get in your car and you do something that your soul moves you to do, and you record it, and then you share it. And then people like me get to go, how cool is that?
That goes to my fearless. I'm driving. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm driving around the parking lot speeding with the windows down and music playing, and I'm like, I'm going to get a ticket or something. I'm like, I don't care. But I'm a real student of cinema, but that film, I think I was 10 when that came out, and it just struck me and really inspired me, and it's probably my favorite film. That one.
Which one?
And I love
which film? Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
And I'm a big fan of David Lean and Hitchcock and Lawrence of Arabia and classic cinema. I've
cinematic.
My kid is really, really well versed in films from the 40s and onward, and he'll sit with me and watch a 3-hour black and white movie from 1953 or 1948 and not complain one moment, that it's black and white. And
they are cinematic masterpieces to watch. To sit down, and I today when I tell people that back in those days you used to have amazing dialogue that would last for 5 minutes without an edit, and just interaction, and people go, what? Because cinema has turned into a lot of jolt editing, and because of people's attention span. But the dialogue that was written and the actors and the way that they put it forth in these old black and white movies is a thing of wonder. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really.
So I can say, let me ask you a question. Did your parents? My father was into Super 8 movies when we were growing up. Was your parents using Super 8 when you were traveling the world and seeing places and museums?
Yeah, they were using Super 8. Yeah,
because go ahead.
No, I was going to say back to like Lawrence of Arabia, for example. Like, now when you look at scenes of like the desert and like where he's sitting in the desert, and the lighting is so perfect. And then there's that other shot, they're in the desert, there's a wide shot, and there's like 5,000 extras. It just makes my brain hurt logistically. Like, how do you even engineer something so logistic? Because I've been in a few movies as well. I was in the Miami Vice movie, and I was fascinated kind of watching the process, and I was in Dexter, and I was in some other movie with Frankie Muniz, and so I've always liked the behind-the-camera thing, because the first time I went to the Grammys, I didn't particularly care about who was there or whatnot, but I was fascinated at how it looked behind the camera. I've always felt like I'm a film director caught in a musician's body, which is funny because Malkovich told me once that he feels like he's a musician caught in a actors/director's body. I'm like, oh, no wonder we get along so well. So there you go.
Yeah, no.
That's fantastic. Yeah. It is.
No.
It is an amazing. It's an amazing. What's amazing is how many people in the entertainment industry have these cross interests. Crisscrossing interests, and how many of them? It seems like you have been able to actually pursue them in a serious way, which I think is absolutely fascinating. How they've all come together for you in a serendipitous fashion, let's say, because it is. We've been talking about law of attraction for the last couple of weeks, and how what we're thinking attracts to us the like frequencies and the people and circumstances that validate our own thinking. And it seems as though that is your life is a living example of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think the cinema side of it also stemmed from my parents watching classic films, but also, you'd see a classic film and you'd see Dr. Zhivago or something, and then you travel to a place that looks like that, and then you're almost living in it, which is I love to go. Like when I'm in LA and I have meetings, I always find shooting locations somewhere on the way between the meetings that I could stop at and just kind of look at. And I love that feeling. Yeah, I love that feeling of being in that world and being part of that world and being like, wow, that tree looks the same as it did 30 years ago, and this is where that happened. So, yeah, it's hard to describe. It's just, plus I've always had the thought of, if you're going to be an artist, you really have to study all forms of art, painting, etc., because then it'll all come together and create your own unique spin on it. So I photograph all of my artwork and design all of my covers and everything. I don't hire anybody, and partially because I'm a bit of a control freak. But, it's just, I just know, usually I know exactly what I want. And if on the rare occasion I don't, I'll delegate something to somebody else.
Right. You have a feeling, and you know what you feel is right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, too, you're curating an energetic frequency that you want, not just through the music, but that you're broadcasting. So when I went to your site and then I went to started to look at some of the things that you've produced, it was just I felt that. I felt the frequency. I felt the high vibrational frequencies of everything. And it was just, it's just beautiful. It's just simply beautiful. I love it.
Sometimes it's difficult to translate it because I really like complex music, everything from Mozart to Yes to progressive rock. But I also love, I think there's genius in simplicity. One band I love is called the Mavericks, and they're like a cool rock band from 1968. They sound like, and they have a song called Come On To Me, and there's so many dynamics in that song, and it's only 2 chords, and only when you start to when you start to play along to it, only when you start to play along to it, you're like, oh my God, it's only E minor and A minor over and over again, and it's just so dynamic. And that's just I love that kind of genius way of taking something simple and making something big out of it. It reminds me of when I was on the Paramount lot one day, and somebody I was with points to this balcony with a fire escape, and they say, "You see that? That's the last scene of Pretty Woman, where she's looking down on him and he's got his arms open." And I'm like, I've always been fascinated with that. That scene is famous. It's the end. Everybody knows that scene, and it was just done in a little thing right there, and yet you never would have known it walking past it. I love that. It's really neat.
It's interesting that you say that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just had a quick question. So if it was, and, to be nominated twice for a Grammy is just phenomenal. And when I saw the cover, and it makes a lot of sense that you have the cinematic influence, is the cover for your latest album that got nominated, which is Silver Moon. You had a moon, and it reminded me of George Méliès, the pioneering filmmaker, of that moon that he created. Was that is that one of your inspirations for cinematography?
That's definitely something that's in the mix. With Silver Moon, the cover, I was trying to mimic the cover of, it came from an album called Loose Salute, which was Mike's second solo album, part of a trilogy. And so I did my name in the same logo he did, and the same oval around it, there's a plate, he has a plate. But I was looking for something, I wanted to find something that was old enough to where it was public domain as well, but had a classic kind of old feeling to it with a moon. So I found that in a thrift shop, and that does play into that, the whole soup of things. That's
that's awesome. That's awesome. Ingredients. I was drawn to percussion back in the 60s. And so I found that I discovered that I had a talent for playing drums, and still do. Although it never really, it wasn't something that I've ever pursued on a higher professional level, such as yourself. And I don't write my music. However, I can identify with absolutely everything that you've said with regard to even not having heard your music, because it's been a really crazy day and a half. However, it is the first thing that I'm actually going to do when I get 2 minutes to rub together later on this evening, is to sit and look at your website and look through your music and get that feel that Lisa and it is so.
I hope you're properly medicated first.
Pardon?
I hope you're properly medicated first before you start looking at the stuff.
Oh well, there will be wine involved, red wine involved. Don't worry.
You go.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm a big red wine fanatic. However, I just have to say this, just on the side. My brother used to work at Paramount in the Star Trek series, and
what did he do?
walked through. He was Tuvok.
Your brother was Tuvok?
Yeah.
Oh, I just tweeted at him yesterday. That's funny.
You just tweeted what at him? Do you know him?
The thing on, well, no. I mean, I follow him, and he. That's so cool. Like I love Star Trek. Don't tell William Shatner because he and I are friends. He might never talk to me again. But
I'm familiar with Shatner.
You what?
I'm familiar with Shatner. Go ahead though. What did my brother put up?
He's cool. He put up a thing on guns, and I retweeted it. Yeah. And it was just a really good graphic on the reality of the situation and statistics and things. And
I have to take a look at that.
I enjoy that's so cool, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, I walked through what I was saying. What I was saying is I've been to the Paramount lot at least 24 times to sit and to see the process of how things are made. Not only that, but with other movies that he did there in Columbia and Sony Studios and the old Desilu Studios that I think Columbia now owns. However, the prop room, the prop area of Paramount is a fascinating walk. You talk about all these movies from the past and just walking through the prop area. You see all this stuff hanging on walls, sitting on tables, stuff around. You can go, yeah, that was in that movie. Oh, yeah, that was in that movie. Oh, yeah, that was. And these are, and you're like, wow, you recognize exactly where you are. You're in a place that is replete with cinematic history. It's just oozing it,
Yeah, I love looking at that stuff. I mean, the people who make that stuff are craftsmen in a whole other realm, and the people who build the sets. And sometimes I think those people don't get enough due. I mean, the beautiful designs, and I've communicated with one of them is a friend, Doug Drexler. You've probably heard of Doug Drexler. He worked on Next Generation and Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and Battlestar Galactica. He's on Picard.
I probably met him.
I
probably met him at one point or another.
Well, he won an Oscar for makeup on Dick Tracy, and he's just an incredibly talented guy. He's an inspiration. And like those guys, Rick Sternbach who designed Voyager, and all these guys are like incredible. But yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, they're like holy relics in a way. Seeing them and just taking you to that place. Yeah, that place.
They've made so much there. Well, I'll check out the tweet. Usually I've probably gotten it in my regular text thread, which is the first place it shows up, and then he tweets it later. But I'll take a good look at it. But it's been joyous. I unfortunately have to go because I've got an emergency situation that I'm needing to take care of right now in the next hour. But I have very much enjoyed this conversation and what I was able to come into. And thank you for allowing me to be there. And I'll connect with you if you leave Lisa your contact info. I live in North Florida, so if you're ever in the North Florida area,
where?
Panama City Beach.
Okay, yeah, because I'm from Miami.
Yeah. I was just down there a couple of months ago. However, if you ever shoot up this way, or if I ever shoot down there, we can connect, and
that'd be cool.
We should stay in touch.
Yeah.
I really would like to connect with you if you've got a project going somewhere. Who knows? Maybe I can stop in and watch you you create magic.
You never know. That'd be cool.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Lisa, thank you so much. And you as well. It's been a wonder.
There's lots of positive energy that everything goes well with your challenge, Michael.
Yeah. So
everything with ease and grace. Everything with ease and grace. Yeah.
It just takes time. That's all. It just takes time.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Both of you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be safe.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that, Michael, you were able to connect with him energetically. Now, so we have been talking, and I'd love for you to share with our audience, because one of the things that I so admire about you is that you are your authentic self. And you have a son, so you're raising your son to experience and to be living in a world that, can be very technologically challenged, and there can be cruelty, and, you can be judged for your expression, where a lot of these older masters that you see in museums and around the world, they were able to create without all the opposite of positive energy. So how do you find it?
If they could have avoided being burned at the stake, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know. I always say, I don't like anything tight around my neck. I was probably hung as a witch or something like that. Yeah. So who knows what that was? But do you have any advice or any insights on really growing into and being your authentic self? I find that one of just such a powerful just character attribute that you have, and that you can see it in everything that you do. And I just would love for you to share some of that wisdom with our audience, if you wouldn't mind.
That's an interesting question, because we're influenced by things every day. So it's hard to really pinpoint what one's authentic self is. I guess you kind of, you know what's important to you inside. And like for me, my friends and my family, my closest friends, I drop everything. If they need me, I drop everything. So like I had one of my best friends, she had breast cancer, and she was very alone. So during her treatments and beyond, I would check on her every day, either via text or a call or something. Didn't matter where in the world I was. But that's kind of the way I am. And, friends who have children who have interests in the arts, I mentor them and I provide opportunities for them. If I see that their talent and their commitment warrants it. So that's always been me. I've always, if I commit to something, work or whatever, I commit to it, and it's a time sucker, to do that for people. But I just feel like, what is life if you're not creating ripples? It's kind of pointless. It's kind of vain. Now, a lot of times people might say, what is he getting out of this? Like, why would he get this, my kid a job opportunity? Like, what is he getting out of it? I'm not getting anything out of it. It's just how I am, So if somebody is ultra talented and, I think it's worth to reach into my contacts, which I rarely ever do, never do, to help some kid or some aspiring thing or give them opportunity, I'll do it. Sometimes, because we live in this transactional way of life, some people may not kind of grasp that. But so, I mean, you generally know what you value and how you are, and you'll get screwed along the way multiple times. Unfortunately, that's part of the process. But I just wouldn't allow anyone who wants to bring you down or who basically doesn't understand things. I have a very unusual life for a very long time. So, my godfather was Einstein's neighbor and colleague at Princeton. My father started a university in Greece. My grandfather and his father and some uncles were executed by Nazis because they were males, back in World War II. I have a great uncle who blew up a monastery and sparked the freedom of Greece, and my mom's a philosopher, and so there's like a lot to live up to. And then all these other things kind of happening to me, and going around the world and hanging out with and collaborating with whoever. Most people don't will never understand what that's like. So my perspective on life and just even nuances of returning calls or emails, or somebody's hurt and somebody needs something, it's a very different approach to things, because when you've kind of experienced a lot of that stuff, you see the different things, different angles, and you see it from different places rather than somebody who might live in a bubble, for example.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's not to minimize or somebody or look down on anybody, but it's just the reality.
No, right. I totally understand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been around the world, you've seen suffering in different countries and different things, and you're more aware of it. Whereas if you just live in the same kind of bubble your entire life, and it's just a completely different understanding of the world. So
I understand. I went to Tanzania and volunteered in a hospital, and people don't understand how good they have it here. I mean, you don't eat unless your family comes to cook for you. And you think,
right.
Like, how does that happen? And it just, every day, you practice gratitude. And your mother being a philosopher, I don't know if you've ever heard of Tim Freak, but he considers himself a stand-up philosopher. And I connected with his books years ago, and he talked about the Amish have a saying, I wonder this. And I really embraced that. And when I was in Tanzania, I went to this place above the building that said the House of Wonder. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to live there. And I think that's why I so appreciate your work, because there is that wonderment in there. There's that joy that
yes, exactly it. And that's one of the reasons why I admire Shatner, is that he's interested in everything. I'm interested in everything. I'm curious about everything. My wife has said many a times, you ask too many questions. I was like, well, okay. But so going back to what you said is that, I think for people to just kind of figure out their core, just explore as much as possible. And, it's not cheap to go around the world and travel and whatnot. Not everybody is able to do it. And that's, it'd be nice if that was part of like a thing colleges offered, study abroad, where everybody could experience that to some degree, so that they can see that there are other ways of doing things and other ways of seeing things, and people with different cultures and traditions. Because one thing I think too many people in the U.S. suffer from is this whole ethnocentric, what do I care what happens in that part of the world? Well, life is ripples. It affects everybody,
absolutely,
whether you know it or not. And I think we all kind of suffer in some ways due to some people's lack of understanding of reality, oftentimes. So, exploration is really the best thing. And creatively as well, I mean, it's not about being the best at playing guitar or playing flute. Being creative is about exploration and experimentation. And I'm not really good at anything, really. Like, I'm just good at being me. So somehow all of these...
That's fantastic.
So somehow all these elements I'm interested in combine into this thing that is me, that nobody else can do the way I do it. So...
and absolutely, you are unique in all the world, and that's what makes you so amazing and wonderful. As do, I think that's what I appreciate David Cho. I don't know if you're familiar with him as an artist, but he grew up in a family where he didn't have, it wasn't acceptable to grow up to be an artist, and he takes himself to the limit. He is so off the charts creative. He just blows me away in sculpture and painting, and he does everything outside the box, and he doesn't really even sell his art anymore. He does it for himself. And I just love, and I felt like that when I connected with your work. And so for our audience, we still have just a little under 10 minutes, but I'd love to hear what is new and inspiring, and where can people connect with you? And I'd love for you to give your website and where people can find you, and just some of the other things that are up and coming.
So I always have too many things going on at once, and depending on what the outcome is from one of them, then you kind of have to refocus and shift focus on certain projects. Because, when this is your day-to-day, you have to think, okay, next month I should do this because that's coming around and that'll monetize then. And then in 6 months I should finish that because then it'll be the season for this. And then so-and-so is doing this next year, so we need to make time to finish that, so I'll do that next time. So there's always a bunch of stuff. But there's, right now with the Americana nomination I have. So with that, you generally have a year window before somebody replaces you. So you have to somehow use that year to kind of further cement some things within that genre. So I have a few of those, and some documentaries and things. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I have an electronic records that I did with Dolores O'Riordan of the Cranberries, because she and I were close friends, and that's unreleased. But, if you get a nomination and say Americana performance, it would be silly to put out an electronic record in the same year, because it just confuses and it just looks like you're unfocused.
I had to step back in really quickly.
Welcome back, Michael.
I apologize.
The last 7 minutes.
The last 7 minutes. Now that I've kind of gotten to a point, all I want to say, Eric, is that I listened to the YouTube, your YouTube piece about your acceptance speech. What an awesome piece of work that is.
I know, I love that too. I didn't.
Eloquent, yeah, and the music.
Amazing.
However, you're absolutely right. A lot of really amazing creatives are being lost nowadays, and kudos to you for reminding this generation, a couple of generations here coming up, and generations that are now starting to discover a lot of even Michael Nesmith's music, that this is the case, not only in music, but in acting and theater. Some really brilliant people, even a lot of brilliant people behind the scenes who made a lot of magic happen, are no longer here as well. So kudos to you for creating, for at least for Michael Nesmith, putting together a project that highlighted his work.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, these people are gods. I mean, they altered the forces of gravity, whether we're aware of it or not, in multiple ways. And the same thing with the great actors and the great filmmakers. I mean, now with technology, music has become such an algorithmic nightmare.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. What's it gonna be like when McCartney and Ringo and the Stones are gone? I mean, that's it. What else is there going to be? I mean, there's still some innovative groups around, like
There's going to be the Greek Elvis.
Yeah, the Greek Elvis.
It's going to be you paying homage to them, and exactly. That's going to be you. Interestingly enough, you mentioned Charlie Watts, who was interestingly enough the one of my best friends in New York City. We had a clothes suit business, and my friend was he was friends with Charlie, and he's a musician, percussionist, and he's also a good friend of Rollins, Sonny Rollins, And it's amazing how, Charlie Watts' passing was a complete and total surprise and a game changer for many people. And we look at this and people go, Charlie Watts, what was that? It's like one of the greatest supergroups of all time. And the person who was the literal heartbeat of the group, no longer there. And you can fill it in with somebody else. However, there's the iconic history. There's the iconic history. There's a personality to the music, and every musician has a personality. I know I can hear, and I know you can do the same thing. You can hear music and you go, oh, that sounds like so and so. Let me double check. Because the licks, the guitar licks, the saxophone riff, the drum licks, you can there's a personality to it all. Just like we all have a personality. People who have music, who know music, play music for a living, and write music have that going for them. Everybody develops their own little niche when it comes to their character as far as their music is concerned. And I'm looking forward to learning what yours is. That would be a real fun trip.
Plus, if the drummer sucks, the band sucks. So, I mean, I
keep saying that.
No pressure.
It's a
all
rule.
The time.
I record with Steve Ferroni all the time, a lot, and we have this conversation, and it's the most important thing, and then really it's the vocal, and then everything else around it. So, I love Steve Jordan. I mean, he's great. Of course, but nobody can play like Charlie. I mean, it's not the same thing, and they got to do what they got to do, and work, but it's a totally different vibe now.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to copy somebody else. It's impossible to do that.
Well, you can't. I mean, he plays like in front of the beat and behind the beat at the same time. It's hard.
True.
You can't mimic that. There's no way.
No. It is quite interesting, and we'll have to have a conversation about this at a little more length, because that is the one pet peeve that I have, is the way a lot of drummers play. And Charlie was unique, and it's true that he felt the music. He felt it. A lot of drummers play; they're proficient, but they don't feel it.
Oh yeah.
And that is the issue that I find.
Yeah. One of my other favorites.
I think that Eric, that's one of your strong points too, is that you feel it. You feel it on so many different levels, and it's a full sensory experience. And I just want to give out your website so if people want to discover your music. And I'm going to spell your last name because I'm guessing that people may not know, and it's Eric, E-R-I-C, not with a K. And then
you can say it this way. Here's an easier thing. You can just go to itsabeautifulDayToday.com.
Fantastic.
There you go.
And
I love that.
Everything. Yeah.
It's a beautiful day. That's fantastic.
Beautiful day today. I was going to do It's a Beautiful Day, but it was taken, and there was a band from the 60s called It's a Beautiful Day. So maybe they own that. But it's a beautiful day today.com, and that links to pretty much everything. The site, the music, the mailing list, et cetera, et cetera.
No, that would be amazing. And actually, I would love to have you back if you're scheduled for us. I know you're super busy, but I know Michael is going to go on your site and he's going, oh my gosh, he's going to be kicking himself. They didn't have an opportunity to ask you 1.5 million questions, and I still have more. And an hour goes by so quickly.
We can keep going if you have the time. I'm just hanging out. It's up to you.
Well, we could do it. We could do it another. We have only an hour on PRNFM, and I'm so grateful to all of you for joining us here. And Eric, is there anything lastly that you'd like to leave our audience?
I have no idea.
Wow.
What about you?
I'm going to say, you know what? Drive around, find a mall. Drive around, blast back to the future, and see where the journey takes you.
I was there actually at the same mall, a month ago, because I saw somewhere that they had the the prop that said Twin Pine Mall from the movie in the mall. So I was like, I gotta see that. Yeah, so it was, and there it was. It was in there. It was like this kind of courtyard area. It was all lit up. And of course, I took a lot of photos of it, and that was really cool. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I'd like to take my kid to that mall at night and drive around like a maniac,
That's the mall you drive around like a maniac. Awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners. And I'm just so grateful. And until next week, abundant blessings and big love to you all.
Good chatting. Thanks for taking the time.